Hey guys, welcome to another video. I'm Neeraj, and in today's video we shall see a round 6 game played in the ongoing candidates tournament. And playing with the white pieces is Nepo and playing black is Ding Liren. This was a very crucial round as you can see the leaders of the tournament starting to run away a little bit and creating a gap between the chasing pack. So playing white was Nepo and he opened with e4. Ding Liren played e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, bishop e7. And here a line which was played a lot earlier was rook e1, but here in the game d3 was played, choosing the more closed structure. Black went with b5, bishop b3, d6, and here Nepo chose to play the move a3. a3 is certainly not the main move over here. The main line in this position is c3, and the game just continues with simple ideas of white developing with knight b d2, rook e1, knight f1. Anyway, a3 is by no means unknown territory as it's been played by Carlsen too. So after a3, Ding Liren went castling, knight c3, knight a5, threatening to capture the bishop, bishop a2, bishop e6. And in this position, black does not mind white capturing and having these double pawns, as these double pawns are not very weak as they cannot be attacked. In fact, black could enjoy this open file and probably have some plans of knight h5, knight f4 in the future. So Nepo played the move b4, and all this has been seen earlier. Ding has a game in this structure, and this particular line has been played at top level quite a lot with Bacrot and Vachel Lagrev playing this line a lot with the white pieces. So Ding went bishop a2, rook takes a2, knight c6, bishop g5. As you can see, the position is closed. White would love to have his two knights and try to eliminate this knight, the f6 knight, by playing bishop takes f6, because after bishop takes f6, white would have total control over the d5 square. So Ding played queen d7, bishop takes f6, knight d5, coming to this outpost, and Ding played the move a5. So this position had been reached, this exact position had been reached in the game played between Magnus Carlsen against Ding Liren in the year 2017. It was played in the St. Louis showdown. And in that particular game, Carlsen played the move c4, striving to have a stronger center. And since this d5 knight is extremely strong, Ding continued with knight e7, white went rook c2, knight takes d5, c takes d5, a takes b4, a takes b4. And when you look at this position, you actually realize that white is pretty comfortable. Although he has these double pawns, the c7 pawn looks extremely weak. It's a backward pawn and an open file. And white definitely does not have any weakness. So, I mean, black can try and attack with rook a4, attacking the b4 pawn, but queen d2, rook f a8, and after rook f c1, Carlsen was very comfortable and indeed went on to win this game. So, I mean, there was no reason for white not to play this, but probably Nepo played something new. Nepo played the move rook b2, which I believe is a novelty. And the idea of rook b2 is very simple. If black just goes ab, white's going to capture, and that's what happened in the game. And when you look at this position, I was actually a little surprised that with the start Ding had in the tournament, he would so readily be okay just to have such a passive position and settle for a draw. Because when you look at this position, you realize that black actually has no ambition. There's a not so good bishop here, an extremely strong knight, and black has a couple of issues with his pawn structure. So Ding played the move bishop d8, protecting the c7 pawn, and obviously There is a threat of knight takes f6. White went c4. Black played knight d4. And white just eliminates the knight. Knight takes d4, e takes d4. And, when you look at this position, you actually realize that there's not much black can do. Black is just going to dance to white's tunes and basically try and parry all the threats white has. So white played the move queen c2, just completing development, and black went rook e8. The idea of developing the rook to e8 is, in certain lines, probably black can try and prepare for this f5 break, and the rook will already be there on this open file. Yeah, so white goes g3. Generally we do not recommend such kind of moves, but over here, when you look at this position, black does not have a light squared bishop, and hence these squares cannot be considered as weak squares. Also, a white can always defend them well by just going f4 queen g2 if need be. So Ding continued with b takes c4, and Nepo recaptured with the queen. When you look at this position, this pawn certainly looks weak, and black has to spend a lot of resources defending that pawn. And in this position, c6 is more or less forced, because if black plays something like, let's just assume a move like h6, white just goes b5 and bam, it's positionally lost, because this pawn's never moving. White is just going to pile up the pressure with rook rook c1 and rook bc2, and this pawn is more or less doomed. So Ding played c6, Nepo went knight f4 and bishop g5. In this position, the knight has two squares. Nepo went knight e2. White could have also gone knight g2. But when you look at the future of the knight on g2, it's not very positive. I mean, the rook would have to come out maybe here, and then the white knight comes to e1 and f3. Personally, it takes quite some time, so I guess the move knight e2 also adds pressure on this pawn. And yes, until now, it's fairly simple. White has everything going in his favor, and black has to defend well in order to salvage a draw. And yes, Ding went d5. More or less, this move had to be played. White went e takes d5, and in this position, black cannot afford to exchange the queens, because this would just mean that white has a pass pawn. In fact, white would just happily go into an endgame where a bishop versus knight with an extra pawn almost, and a couple of weak pawns for black. So in this position, Ding went c takes d5, and white played the move queen b3. Obviously, white cannot capture queen takes d4 because of bishop f6. It would be rather silly to fall in a trap like that. So white played queen b3. And here Ding played a very interesting move, and it's a move that has to be explained, because not always do you in a passive position, not always do you just sit defending. And Ding played this excellent move h5. And the reason why it's considered a good move is black is trying to create his own chances. Black's willing to go h4, h3 and create some threats, or at least something to play for on the light squares. Since now, white has created some holes here, black is making sure that he makes white pay for the g3 move. So h5 is actually a very interesting try. Nepo didn't bother and just continued with b5. Ding played h4, makes sense. b6 and h3 was played. White cannot just ignore the threats towards his king, because black is not far from giving checkmate. So Nepo played a wise move here, king h1. And black played the move rook e b8. Now on first look, this position seems pretty lost for black. It is definitely extremely hard, but it's not clear how exactly white can manage to promote the b pawn. And yes, he obviously has to deal with these slightly weak squares. So in this position, Nepo brought his last piece into the action, rook fb1. making sure that he can consolidate this extremely strong warrior on b6. Black went bishop d8. And in this position, Nepo was analyzing the move b7. That's what he said in his press conference. And after rook a7, knight f4, rook b into b7, queen into b7, rook takes, rook takes. We can more or less say that white is better, but we're not exactly sure to what extent. And when Nepo said this in the press conference that, with a pawn on b6 and black having absolutely no idea, he thought why not just keep the pressure and be relentless instead of, having a transition in the position. So he played the move queen b5. As we said earlier, the queen exchange would only favor white, as it would go into a favorable endgame with a good knight versus a bad bishop plus an extremely strong pass pawn on b6. So Ding played the move queen g4. And in this position, Nepo played the move queen takes d5 very confidently. And knowing Nepo, he's a very confident and fast player. He wouldn't spend ages on a particular move. So he played the move queen takes d5 and maybe just to believe that he's completely winning. And queen takes d5 probably is not the most accurate move. Queen e8 check could have been stronger. King h7, grab this pawn. Rook takes b6. Rook takes b6. Bishop takes b6. You obviously wouldn't want to capture rook takes b6, or else it'll be absolute... it would be an absolute blunder because of checkmate down here. So in this position, Nepo would just have to play the move knight g1. And when you look at this position, both have 4 pawns. The pawn count is equal, but black has to deal with a couple of threats. And also, it's a point of note is that white's king is pretty safe. This square isn't available for the e4 square isn't available because of this pawn. The f3 square isn't available because of this knight. And yeah, I think white is going to go all the way pressing here, but this didn't happen in the game. Nepo played the move queen into d5, and Ding played rook a5. And when Ding played the move rook a5, it was very interesting because Nepo absolutely thought he's just winning and played the move queen c6. Pretty much, he blitzed it out, and queen c6 is an absolute blunder. It just throws away half a point, and the correct move here would be f3. And the move f3 is just winning because if black just plays rook takes d5, white has pawn takes, and white is a pawn up. Plus, with a couple of weak pawns, it's not very difficult to see why white is better. And if black plays the move, okay, I mean, more or less, whatever black plays, white is just winning. So f3 actually should have been the move played. Okay, like rook takes d5, f takes, I think black can play the move rook d6. Or, rook b7. And after knight f4, rook d6, knight takes h3, takes, bishop takes b6. I think white can just go knight g5, follow it up with knight e4, and with a beautiful knight and with the king marching to f4, I think it would have been pretty easy for white. But yes, Nepo didn't go for this line since he had no reason to see why queen c6 was a blunder. And when the move queen c6 was played, there was a lot of chaos in the chat, and people were like, Nepo has just blundered. But it's extremely hard to see what exactly can black play to refute the move queen c6. In the game, Ding went rook c5, which is a blunder. The only saving move for black here to salvage the half point is the brilliant rook takes b6. And how does white win? Okay, white can just pick up the rook. And it seems like black has just blundered a piece. because bishop takes b6 can be met by um, rook takes b6, or I mean white can just go knight g1. In fact, knight g1 should just be winning because there are lots of threats that black would have to deal with. So for rook takes b6, bishop takes b6, knight g1 just looks winning. But the spectacular move is for rook takes b6. Black has this amazing queen takes e2, and black is just down an exchange. There isn't any immediate mating threat. So on what basis is black giving the exchange? White's rook is attacked. White obviously cannot go rook b2 because of queen takes b2, rook takes b2, rook a1, followed by mate in a couple of moves. Obviously Nepo wouldn't fall in such a small trap. So after the move queen takes e2, many of y'all would be wondering why not rook b8. Rook b8 just seems completely winning for white. And the move rook b8 probably was calculated by Ding too. But here, an amazing computeristic defense with rook e5. It's almost superhuman. And there was there was a lot of debate whether Ding would actually find this or no, and probably on his better days, Ding would have found this. He's known to be one of the most resourceful and defensive player in positions which look lost or seemingly lost. But rook e5, what does this move do? White can be a complete rook up, and black can just go king h7. And yet, with white having a move in hand and defending with rook g1, he's absolutely helpless after black goes queen takes f2. So black has this immediate threat of playing rook e2, and it's hard to find a defense for white. I mean, he can try queen a8. Black will go rook e1. I think that's much more accurate. And after rook h8, king g6. White has a couple of checks maybe, but he does not have this check on e8 because of this rook. And he runs out of checks, and to be fair, maybe it is suddenly black who has the better position here. So rook e5 was an absolutely fantastic move. And when you look at this position, you realize that after the move rook e5, white doesn't have much to do. He could try to go rook g1, but black could just play queen takes f2, and it's basically a transposition to this exact same position. And it's hard to see how white can defend this position. And this was absolutely brilliant. And to see this move, I mean, to calculate the move rook takes b6, obviously black would have to calculate till rook e5 and rook e1, which unfortunately Ding could not calculate, and he played the move rook c5. And even here there's a very interesting line which followed: queen e8 check, king h7, and Nepo just played knight g1, making sure that his king is absolutely safe. Black went rook takes b6. Here there's a very interesting line actually. White played the move queen d8 and the game ended pretty soon. But if white plays the move rook takes b6, which is a blunder because black just has bishop takes b6, rook takes b6, and it seems like white is up a piece. But after the move rook c1, it's hard to see how black can how white can actually defend against the mate. So black has a simple threat of queen f3 check, and also rook takes g1. So white exchanges, and you know, many of us would actually stop calculating right here, saying that okay, white is just up a piece, let's just stop calculating. But then when you look on closer examination of this position, you realize that after the move d3, rook d6, rook d1, white can make absolutely no improvement. Unfortunately for white, these pieces are just stuck about here. And with f4, black could just play maybe something like g6. White could try g4. Black can just go king g7. And the point is that it's going to be extremely hard. It's going to be extremely hard for white to actually salvage something out of this position, because the rook is stuck to the d line. black's just going to push d2. Actually, in fact, maybe instead of something like king g7, black could play the move d2 first, you know. And the point is that the rook is stuck to the d line because black is just going to play rook. If, for example, white plays something like rook f6, black just has rook takes g1 followed by queen, and black wins. So in this position, probably white can try and create a passed pawn like that, but black would just wait. Or probably, no, sorry, king g8 would be much more accurate. And yes, this position cannot be winning because king e8, and we've come to an absolute standstill here. White would have only to move the rook like that, and black just can play king e7. So this is obviously something that Nepo, this was the last trap that Nepo had to avoid. And in this position, instead of playing the move rook b6, because these kind of traps are not very easy. I mean, when you explain, it's very easy to understand that, okay, white, that would be a blunder because white cannot improve. But it's hard to figure out when you're playing a game that you're a piece up and yet you can't win the game. So Nepo just drilled the final nail in the coffin with queen takes d8. Rook takes b2, rook takes b2, and now he's up a piece. And the difference is that in this position, Nepo has this very good move, queen h4. So he really doesn't have to defend against this mate by playing the move queen e4. And the big difference is, after rook d1, black does not have this d pass pawn. This d pass pawn is no longer a pass. The d pawn is no longer a pass pawn. And after the move f3, Ding just resigned because if he went rook takes d3, white can just play the move knight takes h3, and for rook into f3, king g2, and it's more or less just the technical part left for Nepo. And yes, a very interesting game. Nepo seems to be on a roll, 4.5 out of 6. He's begun his march towards Magnus. And if I'm not wrong, I think it would be a very interesting World Championship match if Nepomniachtchi could actually go on and win the candidates, because I think he's the only player to have a plus score against Magnus Carlsen. So I hope you enjoyed this video and it was instructive too. I hope all of you are safe and staying at home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and let us know in the comment section if you found any more interesting lines in this game. And please do not forget to hit the bell icon for regular updates. Thank you.